Good evening, you're watching Estuary TV News. Coming up, we report on scrutiny of mental health care in Scunthorpe. We ask where's the Mayor, this week John Everson, Mayor of Barton, and I'll be reviewing the week's regional press with Dr. Robert Jaggs-Fowler. Welcome to Estuary TV News. I'm Hugh Richards. First of all, it's over to Dan Kemp for the news headlines.
Hello there. Hull City Council has proposed a council tax rise of 1.95% in their draft budget. The city makes less from council tax revenue compared to the national average, with 87% of Hull's homes in their lowest bands, A or B. The final decision on the budget will be made at a full council meeting on Thursday the 26th of February. A new facility to build offshore wind towers is to be built in the Humber region. Korean firm CS Winds announced it will create almost 200 jobs with the new facility after receiving regional growth funding from the Department of Business and Innovation Skills. The factory announcement comes after CS Winds set up its UK operation last September. And in Grimsby, a training college has unveiled a new working replica wind turbine, which will help train engineers of the future. The to-scale version, housed inside the Grimsby Institute, has all parts of an actual turbine and even spins around, providing a new experience in the training of students who will potentially go on to work at Siemens or in the Humber offshore industry.
Absolutely, yes, it's a fantastic opportunity for us once again. An area that we'll be looking into will be around the repair and maintenance of wind turbines, because obviously they have quite a substantive lifespan. There's a whole industry building up around that maintenance operations that are required for the equipment, along with something else that we'll be looking and moving into along the lines of blade maintenance, because obviously from a piece of equipment it's the blades that get more damaged than anything else. And obviously that again leads into other areas that we can look at from an educational perspective, from a training perspective.
Hull has become the latest city to show its commitment to tackling domestic violence towards women. Police in the city react to at least 550 cases of domestic violence every month, and this new commitment sees ambassadors from the City Council, NSPCC and Humberside Police, amongst others, join forces. In Hull, the anti-violence campaign launched on Valentine's Day. There's often an increase in violence against women at this time. Academy rugby players from Hull have been put through their paces by Humberside Fire and Rescue at their East Hull fire station. Players from Hull Kingston Rovers' academy side suggested that public service may be their vocation of choice should they fail to break through into the world of professional rugby league, and Pete Grayburn, head of youth development at the club, believes it's vital that they remain realistic.
If we can get two players a year from the academy signing first team, then job done. We've got 13 here now, so if we can get two out of this group, then that's still 11 players who are not going to be making it and need to find alternative career plans.
Some of the lads, obviously they're only 17-year-olds, so it's quite strange to see them carry out, these physical demanding, jobs that we do on a daily basis. There's techniques and, some of them are struggling with it, but they're all giving it their all, and it's good to see, really.
And finally, a dog involved in a car accident is now the centre of an appeal after having undergone emergency surgery. Akira, an 18-month-old Labrador, had a severely deformed front leg, which caused a debilitating and painful bowing. This prompted the surgery to remove her leg, which now needs paying for. Anyone who can help is urged to visit the charity's Just Giving page by searching Akira on the site or by making a cash donation at Jerry Green Rescue's Broughton base. That's all for me. Bye for now.
Soldier, scholar, statesman here. To look at the week's papers, I'm joined by Dr. Robert Jaggs-Fowler, a GP in Barton and the medical director of the Clinical Commissioning Group of North Lincolnshire, and also a former soldier, a former jurist, a theologian, and he's written a book. Robert, thank you very much for coming in.
Not at all. Thank you for asking me. Good evening to you.
Your book is Lamplight in the Shadows.
It is.
Without spoiling the ending, tell me what it's about.
It is at heart a love story. It's a thinking man's romance. It tells the story of a young GP who is looking to join his first practice. He also has ideals on ordination as a priest, and trouble is he's in a difficult marriage, falling apart at home, and finds himself falling in love with another lady. Causes great conflict of desires, passions, conflict of ethics and morals. What does he do? And it's the love story that drives the plot.
Well, with that little detail, I'm not going to ask if it's autobiographical, but he's a doctor, a possible priest. You seem to have had a few different vocations yourself. Is there any an element of yourself in this?
Well, the first thing I would say is that many people ask me if it's autobiographical. It is a novel, and I refer everyone to the disclaimer at the front of the book. If you think you're in it, read the disclaimer, you're not.
Okay, that's the lawyer in you speaking. I think.
Absolutely. But like any writer, you write about what you know, and it's inevitable that people know me well. They'll see reflections in certain things in my life, certain ideals and aspirations, certain philosophies.
And much of it existing in the medical world as well.
Absolutely.
This is all, you've written other things as well.
I have indeed. My first collection of poetry was published in 2008, A Journey with Time, and then I wrote an academic book looking at the relationship of law and medicine as the two professions, asking whether law is medicine's friend or nemesis. I won't spoil the ending of that one either.
Well, that's always an ongoing debate, isn't it? That one never ends.
It certainly is.
This is published by Matador Press?
Matador, yes indeed.
Now
yes.
how does that work? Did you send them the manuscript?
Yes, and they decide whether it's worth publishing. And if it is worth publishing, they press the green light, and it all happens from there. You get the benefits of the professional copy editing, proofreading, marketing, and so forth.
Very necessary, that especially the editing, as many of the authors who've sat there have exaggerated, have emphasised. This is a hard copy book, of course. Where can people get it?
You can get it either through my website, where viewers could actually obtain a slight discount, www.robertjagsfowler.com. That links in through to the publisher, or from all those online booksellers and in the bookshops by the end of the month.
Those booksellers named after rivers?
Indeed.
Okay. And there's an electronic version available as well?
There is an e-version, yes, indeed.
Let's have a look at the newspapers, Robert. What's that first story you found for us?
Well, the first one is rather dear to my heart. It's a story of a former major in the Royal Army Medical Corps, and of course I am wearing, coincidentally,
you are a former major in the Royal
tie
Medical
today,
Corps, yes.
who comes from Winterton, and he's joining a couple of disabled soldiers on a 150-mile run through the Sahara Desert in aid of a charity for wounded soldiers. And I think that's a wonderful endeavour, not only, of course, on his part, but those guys who are running it who are disabled themselves, which shows great endeavour.
Would it not just be simpler to get a taxi?
In the Sahara, I'm not quite sure if...
As a medical man, how sensible is it to go running for 150 miles through the empty wastes of the desert?
Oh, I'm sure it's terribly nonsensical. But then again, we're talking about trained soldiers here. I'm sure they know what they're doing.
Okay. And I mean, we've got a great tradition in the British Army of the desert rats, I suppose, haven't we?
Indeed, absolutely. Yes, I wish them jolly good luck.
You were a medical doctor. You'll be familiar with the sorts of wounds that these men have suffered, and that this is raising money for.
Very much so. As a tremendous charity, these guys have actually. I did not see active service. These guys did, and they've lost limbs in the service of this country. It's wonderful that something's given them back.
Absolutely right. Another military story.
Yes, well, this is rather an intriguing one, actually. This is a story about a chap who lived in Hull, and the question is whether he was part of the team who arrested Himmler.
Right.
Which is a rather intriguing historical story.
There is. If I can, I'll just hold that picture up to the camera. Yes, a Hull man. Chances are he arrested, what should we, well, it's ridiculous to, comparisons are odious, but shall we call him the second nastiest man of the 20th century?
Quite possibly so.
Heinrich Himmler was the head of the SS, of course, wasn't he?
Indeed.
And sort of number 2 or number 3 to Adolf Hitler. What happened after the arrest?
I'm not too certain.
Well, I'm afraid I am.
Right, because you're the historian.
Well, Himmler was arrested in trying to get to the Flensburg government, so-called. And when he was arrested, I'm afraid, like so many of them, well, perhaps rightly like so many of them, he took a suicide pill. And so justice was never done. He never faced a trial, I'm afraid. But if a Hull soldier arrested him, and in these sort of slightly strange circumstances of finding him in a wood as well, then, well, a very lucky piece of police work.
Absolutely, yes.
I think. One more very, very quick one here. I think this is one for you as a novelist.
Indeed. This is close to my heart. This young girl, a Year 7 student, has read 25 novels in 4 months. And not only has she read 25 novels, but she's actually had to write about them as well. And this is quite an achievement, and normally it takes the students much longer to get through those 25 novels.
You prefer that your novels to be savoured, though, and read much more slowly?
Definitely slowly, absolutely.
Robert, please don't go away. We'll be back in a second.
Thank you very much.
A mental health unit in Scunthorpe has been cleared of any wrongdoing by an independent report into patient safety. It's an inpatient unit that houses more than 30 people with serious mental health issues, often at times when they're most in need. But a number of serious incidents in a short space of time led to bosses wanting to know more about their processes. James Dunn has more.
This unit looks after people with acute mental health disorders, so incidents are not unusual. But in the winter of 2013, there was what Northern Lincolnshire Clinical Commissioning Group calls a cluster of serious incidents. So they began an investigation with Rotherham, Doncaster and South Humber NHS Foundation, which runs the service. That cluster included 6 suicides of patients while on leave from the home. A significant rise in the number of times police were called to incidents with missing patients, concerns that under-18s were admitted to the hospital, and reports of problems from mental health charity Mind.
We were specifically looking at a cluster of patients who had taken their own life. Now, that in itself is not always unusual. People do unfortunately take their own life at times, but we wanted to make sure that the services they were receiving was reducing that risk as much as possible, and that if they were to go out on their own at any time, that the assessment of whether they need additional support or whether they needed further assessment or further medication or anything was being taken into account.
At a governance meeting yesterday, they praised staff for their cooperation and transparency during the investigation. And a report suggests the unit has turned a corner. It says there's no evidence that care is unsafe. There's been no serious incidents since December 2013, and just one call to police. Police said that circumstances on the ward have improved, and so has their relationship with the home. And the unit has actually been making improvements since a negative report in 2011. It just took some time for the changes to take effect. But it did make no less than 20 recommendations for further improvements.
Well, I think that the report shows clearly that we've made significant improvements and that the plan is to continue to do so. We've got a really strong team that are leading in the inpatient setting and across the whole service in this locality, and we hope to make further improvements.
You're watching Estuary TV News. A little later in this programme, we'll be checking the schedule of John Everson, Mayor of Barton, and Dan Kemp will bring us all the sports news. Robert Jaggs Fowler is still with me, and Robert, I think you have some insight into that story we just heard from James about mental health in Scunthorpe.
Indeed. Quite coincidentally, I'm the medical director for the North Lincolnshire Clinical Commissioning Group, as you've already identified. And we need to seek assurance when we're looking at our hospitals that we commission our services from. And then there were a few concerns regarding Great Oaks, where a lot of the mental health service takes place. So we commissioned an external review of one particular ward, which was causing concern. But happily, any issues that might have been there have been resolved, and we have confidence in the standards that are at Great Oaks Hospital.
Presumably when there is a problem and you do identify it, that's the result not of malice but of negligence.
Well, it could be negligence, but as a former lawyer yourself, you would understand that negligence is a very strong word and lots of criteria attached to it. But most certainly it needs to be looked at very carefully.
Well, good. Excellent scrutiny. Slightly medical story you've identified here.
Yes, I think this is rather a heartwarming one, actually. Dax is a young chappie who was born prematurely in New York on the 28th of December.
When his Lincolnshire parents happened to be visiting New York.
Absolutely.
And were not expecting a new arrival.
She was not expecting to go into labour at that stage. He weighed 3 pounds, I believe, at the time of birth, which is minuscule, really. Took an awful lot of care in hospital. Landed the parents with the potential of £120,000 or £30,000 medical bill.
Yep.
And a lot of angst resulted from that. But happily, the insurance company have finally decided they're going to pay out, And this week, Dax has arrived home in Lincolnshire to start his new life with his family.
It's rather frightening, though, isn't it, that if you're in America and you have a medical emergency, if you've got a very premature baby like this, but even just giving birth, after 9 months, it's going to cost thousands and thousands of pounds if you do it in America.
I think when one thinks about how little it costs us in England with the National Health Service and the service that we actually do get as patients, and then compare it to something like America, despite all the faults of the National Health Service, which there are many, it's incomparable.
Very well. Well, it's sort of there's arguments about that I won't go into, but that's I think that's one side of the story anyway. We have another nativity. This one equally unexpected. This is in the Grimsby Telegraph. Mermaid's purse, i.e. a shark's egg, has been discovered in a Grimsby pet shop. The owners hadn't expected the two bamboo sharks, named unimaginatively Bam and Boo, to have been quite so fertile. And they've got two mermaid's purses, two shark's eggs, waiting for them to be born. Just a couple of quotations I thought were worth reading out here, Robert. One of them is, we've had to move the eggs into another tank from its parents in order to stop Sheldon the pufferfish from eating them. Doesn't make the shark seem very tough, does it?
It doesn't indeed.
Not very parental.
That was absolutely wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
And also the shopkeeper, Gary Hodgson, said, it's all very exciting and we're proud to say we're going to be parents for the first time.
Isn't that lovely? We are proud to.
How delightful. You're going to be bringing up Jaws.
Yes, yes.
Absolute delight.
Yes, I hope they have another tank.
We've got a couple of medical stories as well. This one was, I think you identified this one also from the Grimsby Telegraph.
Yes, understandably something that's very close to my heart again. This is a local football club, I believe, certainly a sports club, who are assisting in raising money for external defibrillators, automated external defibrillators for their crowds.
Cleethorpes Town Football Club, that is, isn't it?
Cleethorpes. Life-saving equipment, very easy to use. Anyone can use one, very valuable, cost a few £1,000s, but well worth it when it saves that first life.
You see them around more and more often, don't you? They're sort of at places where they might be useful, in public places, in schools,
railway stations,
libraries, railway stations,
pubs, all over the place.
So why are we not all trained to use them if we all have access to them?
Well, it's nice to have the training, but in actual fact, even if you haven't got training, you only need to open up the box and it talks to you and it will talk your way through it. So if ever you come across a situation and you need to use one or think, just go ahead. It will tell you what to do.
And what happens if, there must be risks if you use one of these things. Electric shocks are involved
You
here.
can't use it inappropriately. It will not shock the heart that isn't appropriate for shocking.
Really?
Absolutely.
Clever.
Wonderful piece of kit.
Clever machines. A further health story here. Blue Bike Bonanza gears up. This is from the Bridlington Free Press. What do you think? This is people donating bicycles. This is all in preparation for the Tour de Yorkshire. Is it a good idea to get people moving?
I think it is, and I'd like to see greater road safety coming along on the back of this. Great exercise, great fresh air, outdoors exercise, reducing weight. It's all there. Now we just need to tackle the road safety.
Doctors are all the same about getting much more exercise, and I'm much more the taking a taxi to somewhere where I can have a glass of medicinal malt whiskey.
If you do the exercise, then you can drink that whiskey with impunity.
Well, thanks for that advice, Robert. Thank you very much for coming in. Over now to Barton, where we ask John Everson, where's the mayor?
Okay, well, I'm Mayor of Barton-upon-Humber on the south bank of the Humber Estuary, and I've got 4 mayoral functions next week. We have a community grant presentation. The local authority has a big grant pot which helps local community, and we've got a morning of presentations and thank yous, which all the mayors are invited. And then in the evening, which is Tuesday evening, the Barton Operatic Society are doing a production, a musical comedy, Oliver, and I'm taking a mayoral party of approximately 25 to 30 people to the opening night of that show. Also, as part of my mayoral charity fundraising, I've chosen Blessmer, which is the military charity for injured servicemen. and we had a function only a couple of weeks ago, and I'm actually doing receiving a cheque presentation. So we'll be doing that on the Thursday night, and then at the weekend, it's the Mayor of North Lincolnshire's civic dinner, and we'll be attending there with all the other mayors, and hopefully trying to raise a lot of money for another charity, Wish Upon a Star for the Mayor of North Lincolnshire. So there are 4 events there. It's quite a busy week really for a town and parish mayor. We maybe don't do anywhere near the numbers that the mayors in boroughs do, but there we are. 4 events: civic dinner, community grants presentation, operatic society, and receiving a cheque.
And now here's the sport with Dan Kemp.
It's another big weekend of action in our area, but Hull City won't be seeing any of it after being knocked out of the FA Cup. Scunthorpe United host Swindon Town at Glanford Park tomorrow afternoon. The Iron will go back into the game on the back of conceding a last-minute goal against Coventry City on Tuesday, where the final score was 1-1. And we'll hear from Mark Robbins in a moment. Meanwhile, it's 4th versus 3rd in the conference as Grimsby Town host Bristol Rovers. The Mariners are safely in the playoff picture, but need to pick up maximum points to keep pace with tomorrow's opponents. And North Ferriby United host Tamworth in the Conference North. The Villagers are the league's draw specialists with 11 draws from their 27 games so far. Greg Anderson and Josh Wilde are their only injury doubts, having both picked up knocks in the FA Trophy game last week. The findings of an investigation into the incident between a Grimsby Town fan and stewards at their match against Forest Green Rovers last weekend has returned as inconclusive. A statement on the Forest Green website says that given the lack of conclusive evidence available, conflicting claims and lack of third-party corroboration, we cannot conclude that there was internal serious wrongdoing after either stewards or the fan. So back to Mark Robbins, and he's admitted he's a fan of Swindon's football. Saturday's opponents are riding high in the league, and Robbins expects it to be a tough encounter.
Big expectation from Swindon in terms of the way that they play. You know, how they play is great, good to watch. I hope I'm not watching too much of it on Saturday. We need to be at it. So we've been working on what we need to be doing and the performance levels and what we're looking for.
After gaining a point at the Elite League leaders on Wednesday night, the Hull Stingrays return home to face the Fife Flyers on Sunday. Canadian forward Corey Tanaka has already set his sights on 2 points for the Rays in a game where face-off is 6 p.m. at the Hull Arena. And finally, Hull KR's head of youth development has high hopes for his youngsters. They've been called into the England Academy side. Prop Chris Smith, back rower Chris Brown, hooker Elliot Windley and loose forward Owen Harrison will all be in the squad for the 2015 season.
It's the first step of the ladder, and they've got to continue to work hard and not only impress us but impress the England selectors, and hopefully, we'll represent the country at one time.
And that's all for the sport.
And that's all we have time for, I'm afraid. You know the contact details on the screen. Until Monday, good evening.
Hello and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. After a cloudy, misty start with occasional rain, some cloud breaks are likely to occur with some brightness developing. However, further showers are likely with a chilly onshore breeze along the coast and a maximum temperature of 8 degrees. Sunday, rather cloudy, early fog and mostly dry.